Imagine being a young person right now, just going into university. I mean, the world is such an amazing and dynamic place. Yeah, look, there's issues, but there is lots of opportunities. You can literally do whatever you want. I really encourage my students, and I think this is important for those of us with a bit more experience as well, to follow your dreams, go after your goals.
Welcome to the GovComms podcast, bringing you the latest insights and innovations from experts and thought leaders around the globe in government communication. Now, here is your host, David Pembroke.
Hello everyone and welcome to GovComms, a podcast about the practice of communication in government and the public sector. My name is David Pembroke. Thanks for joining me. As we begin, may I first acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from where we are broadcasting from today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise the ongoing contribution they make to the life of our city and this region. Indeed, may I also pay my respects to all First Nations people of the lands from where anyone listening to this podcast is joining us from today. So, at a time when artificial intelligence is reshaping how we work, how we communicate, and ultimately how we make decisions, what is the role for professional communicators in organisations, both public and private, that are continuing to evolve at a rapid rate? Where does the traditional function of communication now sit, and has it become more influential as billions of people around the world now spend more time with their mobile phones every day? Well, today on GovComms, we're joined by someone who's dedicated his career to informing the work of professional communicators. Ross Monaghan is a Melbourne-based communications leader and award-winning educator with decades of experience across the media, in industry and academia. He's currently at Deakin University, where he prepares future-ready communicators and leads vital work on both communication strategy and the ethical use of AI. A former journalist, Ross has held senior roles including Community Relations Manager at Optus and CEO of the Australian Mobile Telecommunications Association, where he helped establish the Mobile Carriers Forum and represented the sector during the rollout of internet-enabled phones. He's delivered presentations from Harvard to Hanoi and continues to influence just how communication is practiced across the Asia-Pacific region. Ross, a very warm welcome to GovComms.
It's great to be here. Thanks, David.
So, Ross, before we get into the work, perhaps a little bit of background about yourself. And when was it that you first thought that communications, the media, might be a path forward, might be a career?
Well, look, believe it or not, I became interested in comms when I needed a new surfboard because I got involved in a junior council and I made eye contact with the mayor of Warrnambool, which is where I grew up, at the wrong time when she was looking for somebody to do PR for the junior council. And she said, Ross, you can do it. And after that meeting, she took me down to the local newspaper and introduced me to the editor of the newspaper. And, being a cheeky bugger, I needed a new surfboard. And so I asked the editor, okay, look, have you got any part-time jobs going? And next day I started as a copy boy at the Warrnambool Standard. And that's where my media and comms career really took off. I was in year 11 at high school. I knew from an early age that I was really interested in those sort of things and wanting to be a journalist and a stupid year 11 kid. I thought, how can I impress the editor? I know, I'll call John Howard's office and get an interview with John Howard. And, it's a ludicrous thought now, but guess what? He said yes. He was coming to Warrnambool about a month later and he said, look, my office will book a time. So he spent an hour with me when I was a year 11 kid. I wrote a story and actually scooped the local newspaper and things took off from there.
Well, that's a great lesson, isn't it? That you don't ever get if you don't try. And I know Absolutely. In my earliest days when I joined the media, I just chased and chased and chased and chased and chased and chased, and there was no such thing as no until it was a definite hard no. And I think sometimes we lose that and we get a lot more discouraged a little bit earlier than we should these days in pursuit of exactly the essence and the right story that you're looking for.
Absolutely. Look, one of my frustrations as an academic and a mentor of younger people is that so many don't actually think that they can achieve their goals, so they don't even try. Imagine being a young person right now, just going into university. I mean, the world is such an amazing and dynamic place. Yeah, look, there's issues, but there is lots of opportunities. You can literally do whatever you want. You can travel in comms. You can work in bigger organizations, governments. You can make change to the world working in a non-government organisation anywhere that you're located. So I really encourage my students, and I think this is important for those of us with a bit more experience as well, to follow your dreams, go after your goals, because no one is going to ring you, David, and say, hey, look, are you interested in, this or that job? That randomness is never going to happen. But if you go out there and, try and make it happen, from my experience, over 20 years at Deakin, students who try, it's almost a 100% success rate, if they think about what they want to do and then come up with a plan. So, dream big is my message.
Looking back now, you've had a great career from that early start. And, oh, by the way, did you get your surfboard?
I did. I got a custom-made one from Sydney, which was was great.
Very good. Well, I hope it's still in use from someone down on the surf coast there at the bottom of Victoria. So, but it's interesting that you have had this great career through journalism, through the industry associations and into academia. What are your reflections now if we take you up to 40,000 feet and you sort of look down upon where we are at the moment? Because I share your optimism, and I'm a good bit older than you, and certainly a lot of the people that we're listening to. And I'm a bit dirty that I'm 62 and not 22, because I see, like you, that there is so much there now that you can... So many more tools now, this ability to be able to go direct, to be able to, carve out a niche and to be able to create value, to think about your audience, to get to know your audience, to be consistent, to add value. The opportunities are there, and I see it every day. And I do hope younger people don't get discouraged, because, there is so much opportunity there. But someone who, like you, who has been around the academic part and also the practical applications of the function of communication, what are you seeing from that elevated position?
Look, a couple of pieces of advice. One, find a mentor and take it. Listen to advice. I was going to say take, but that sort of contradicts what I'm about to say. Get lots of advice, get lots of help. And secondly, follow your gut. Do what you enjoy doing. I mean, it's truism that, if you like what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think that attitude is what employers want now. So I really encourage my students to get lots of advice. Do your research is basically what I'm saying. Remember that lots of people out there do want to help you. And that's true not only for younger people, but I think, mid and even senior people as well. There are a lot of people out there that genuinely want to help people be great leaders and be great people. So get that advice, network with people, but follow your gut and follow that dream, because if you enjoy what you do, you bring that enthusiasm and that positiveness to a role. And, it's much easier to get people to follow you if you've got a carrot. I just find it really, really hard if you're using that stick to get people to follow you.
So then in terms of the skills, like moving into the communications field, what advice is it that you are giving to younger people and indeed mid-career professionals that you're engaging with? How are you advising people at the moment in terms of the way that they can stay relevant and valuable in their careers in the communication function, be it the private sector or the public sector, because really they're not that much different?
No, I agree. And look, my message is pretty simple. Be a leader. just lead in what you do. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be a divisional leader or the corporate affairs manager for an organisation or even your team. You can lead in so many ways. Lead by looking and investing your time in learning about new communication technology. Learn about, the way that leaders can better communicate, how they can help their organisation. Lead by sharing advice about what you've learnt in your role. Take it a step further, go and volunteer for organisations, whether it's an industry association. And I've had a long association with IABC, but there are many other non-government organisations and other great opportunities where you can lead, because by demonstrating your leadership, it demonstrates that you're passionate about what you want to do. And that, as I've already talked about, that passion and that enthusiasm comes through. But putting on my selfish hat for a moment, being a leader also teaches you a lot as well. Putting yourself out there, making some mistakes, learning a lot, networking with other people. All of those things I've done throughout my career. I remember back in the day when I worked for BHP, leaping into desktop publishing. David, you remember PageMaker and all that, and Quark Express, all those programs back in the day, which, are really antiquated now, but pointed to the future and pointed to what is coming. So if you are on the cusp of change, that is going to give you a really good insight into what's coming into the future, and it helps you prepare.
Now, we'll pause there for a big IABC plug for anybody who is not connected to IABC, who is listening to the podcast today. It's a fantastic global community of professional communicators, and I would strongly advise, if you are not involved, get involved, consume the content, become a part of the IABC, because it is where you will find leadership, it's where you'll find guidance, it's where you'll find advice, it's where you'll find case studies. Most of the problems that you're looking at today that you're thinking you might not be able to solve, guess what? Somebody's had exactly the same problem, and there's every chance that on the IABC website and amongst the vast vaults of previous information that there'll be valuable stuff. So go and take a look at iabc.com. You will never regret that. So that commercial is finished there for the IABC. But listen, around that point of leadership, I totally agree with you around this role of leadership and being curious and working across the organisation, because communications peoples are really the connectors of the organisation, aren't they? They're the ones who are taking the temperature in the different places. They're sort of the nosy Parkers who are getting about, not sort of that nosy as in, look, not self-interested nosy, but interested just to be interested, so as that they can identify and find the pulse of the story, the narrative, the great storytellers that exist in organisations who are often not in the communications places. So it is that role that I believe that communicators can play, but it's a little bit more difficult now that we have so much of a preponderance, particularly in the public sector, of work from home and remote working. What's your observation of the impacts of remote work on the communication function, and what advice would you have for people who are in the communication function in organisations where at least 3, perhaps even sometimes 4 days of work from home is sort of the norm across their organisations?
Yeah, look, that's a question that a lot of organisations right around the world are grappling with. And of course, there's, in certain areas, there is a push for more office-based work. But look, I think the future is definitely a mix of working from the office and working from home, because of the flexibility that provides many people in the workplace. Interestingly, as a little aside, talking to my colleagues in the US, there is a much bigger trend now of meeting up face to face and real events rather than online events. So I think that's a good sign. But I think, I look back to my time during COVID, when we were all stuck. Everyone was stuck at home, and doing things like regular catch-ups with the team online can work. And remembering too that, forging links and good working relationships isn't always talking about ROI and business related issues. Before you get to those things, you've got to know, what footy team do you support? If you've got a family, where's your next holiday? All of those sorts of things are really important. And I truly see so many internal comms programs just focusing on that business related issues. And I think that is driving a lot of people away from the traditional internal comms stuff that many organizations are doing, because, at the heart, we're humans. We want that human connection. So remember that when you are trying to build a team, that whether it's remote or in person, have some time to sit down and just build and forge those relationships on a personal level with people. Because if that doesn't happen, it's really hard for good quality work to follow. So think about ways that you can maybe, have an after party at, your regular formal meetings. So give people the opportunity to just stay on a webinar for, 15 minutes with the host. The official session has finished. Just let people talk and vent or, have a cathartic experience. Though that's where I think the magic happens within organizations when communication happens in a somewhat random way by people thinking about the challenges that they're facing, finding connections with somebody else within the organisation. So that'd be my major tip. But going back to your other point about professional comms people, yeah, we are great at that. We're networkers. We're the liaison between an organisation and its stakeholders and its target audiences. And look, that makes our job I think one of the best jobs that there are out there. And I'm passionate about getting people to tell younger people what exciting careers there are in professional communications, being able to help organisations, whether it's commercial and NGOs or governments, being able to help them help society. It is a really rewarding and exciting career.
Yeah, here. I totally agree with that. I've been involved in it for many, many, many years, and I'm having as much fun today as I ever have, and looking forward more to what is to come. And it's interesting that point you raised there around, the people side of things and internal communications, about, being more than just whatever the position, because there was an instance here in where I'm broadcasting from Australia's capital city, Canberra, and the leader of one of the big groups inside Defence, a guy by the name of Leon Phillips, from the Guided Weapons Explosives Ordnance. Anyway, it's a bit of a team building exercise across his organisation. They came up with this idea of coming up with a cookbook. And Leon, likes to cook apparently. And so he put in his recipes, and everyone, from around the organisation put in their recipes. And, quite a nice idea. But it came out in Senate estimates. It was trivialised by the media. And, what are these people doing? This is a waste of time. And it cost nothing. Like, it was a few $1,000s to print the thing. But there's the risk sometimes, isn't there, that the cynicism from the outside comes in and doesn't quite understand that in fact was a very powerful tool of community by combining people and cooking to create a sense of community. But ultimately, they took a whack around the chops for what was probably a pretty good idea and a very cost-effective way of building team amongst that very important organisation, which has a very important job. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that sort of external criticism around what was ultimately, what I believe anyway, was a good, clever idea?
Look, be open, honest and transparent. I think, if they had sent out a news release that they were putting this together before they'd actually done it, went out there on their website, said, hey, we're putting this, it's got nothing to do with business, but it brings our team together. It's costing the organisation nothing. It's largely being done in the time of those employees. If you put that out there, you and me, David, have been in the media for years. Immediately, you take away the sensationalization of it by saying, yeah, look, we told everyone. I mean, we're glad that you're promoting this. We're glad that you're promoting this fantastic work that our employees are doing in their own time to help us better communicate and better deal with these really important issues that we're dealing with within our organisation. So thank you, Herald Sun, for promoting that. That's good
advice. That's great advice.
The best thing that when I look back at my career and a great piece of comms that I did for my organisation when I was at Optus, and I got into my office one day and my boss, Melina Reid, had got this clipping went back in the days when we had, I think it was delivered by fax. And she said, don't let this go to your head. And it was a headline, Optus PR coup. And it was just a no-brainer to me because we were following up with putting up a mobile phone tower, and I think I'm sure it was in Daylesford, where the community were very concerned about mobile phone towers. Telstra went through a heated battle, legal, with regulatory issues. It was just brutal campaign. People were chaining themselves to bulldozers. And as Telstra put up a mobile phone tower at deployment, people came to me and said, right, now we want a tower in Daylesford. And I just shook my head and went, oh, no. So, right, open, honest and transparent. Let's go to the media right now and say, we want to do it and we want to work with the community. We want to work with council. And we put a plan together. And as soon as we briefed the council, immediately they came out of that meeting. I called the local media and said, we've just briefed them all our plans. You can see all our plans. We commit. If the community doesn't want it, we will leave. So, and that's how we got that Optus PR coup, that by being open, honest and transparent. And, if there are any comms people out there, try and do that, not for the sake of, or not just for the sake of doing the right thing. It's going to help with your comms as well.
But so the PR coup, though, was just that, the very fact that you'd been open and honest. So how was that information presented? Was it just in detail, with drawings, with consultation? How was it that it was judged to be a coup?
Because the council were supportive and we spoke to local residents and local opposition groups and said, we want to be completely transparent. Our only objective is to get mobile phone coverage in Daylesford. We want to work with you to find the most appropriate way to do that. We don't want to fight. We want to work with you. Subsequent to that, we got, I've talked about this many, many times, but we got KPMG to do an analysis of working with communities as opposed to fighting local communities. And there was just a stark difference. I mean, fighting communities pretty much in the day doubled the cost of a mobile phone tower, whereas working with a community increased the cost by about 10%.
Yeah.
And
that you're talking tens of millions of dollars, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which again is part of the communications people. It's always very important to try to get those numbers, but also then to promote those numbers. And I'm sure that's why you did the work with KPMG, to be able to validate, substantiate the claims about the benefit of effective communication.
Yeah. And, under the leadership of Sam Austin, who many people will know, she was my boss back in the day, just a great person, and now our Governor General. We were able to go to the CEO and say, okay, look, what's the way forward? We can fight communities or we can work with them. We're going to save a lot of money if we work with local communities. What do you think? It's just a no-brainer for the CEO when you actually put hard facts and figures there. And we didn't include things like reputation damage. We just talked about real estate fees, redesign fees, legal fees, loss of revenue from these towers. And once you think like a business person, when you be open and transparent with people, things just came together, and it really was a turning point in how the mobile phone industry dealt with mobile phone deployment, not just in Australia. I mean, we did this and went and spoke around the world at places like Harvard about how we did this.
Mm. So I think that you sort of touched on something there as well, as some more particular advice that I'm sure that you do give, is that point about, in that case, as a communicator, you needed to think like a business person. You needed to think like the CEO and understanding, okay, well, what are the hot buttons for the CEO and how are we going to present this information? But it doesn't matter whether it's in the private sector with a CEO or a senior executive. It's exactly the same, isn't it? When you're in the public sector, you're thinking about what the secretary, the deputy secretary, the minister, the minister's office, how are they thinking about what it is that you are doing so as that you can answer the question before you get there. And exactly the same with NGOs, NGO boards, NGO leadership, that you really do need to take the time to sit in the shoes of those particular people so as that you can be effective with the advice and the recommendations that you're going to be making.
Look, I think my biggest criticism of comms people out there is that taking the title too seriously. Our job is not communication. Our job within an organisation is to help an organisation achieve its goals and objectives, and we will do that through our area of expertise, which is communication. And I think so many of us, and I've done this myself, we think of ourselves as the Chief Communication Officer. And I think that's an absolutely cringy title because everyone in an organisation communicates. Our job is to guide that. And going back to internal comms, it's not internal comms' job to make all of the communication. Maybe it's a departmental leader. Maybe it's, somebody who's an engineer in that department who loves communication, helping them facilitate communication and helping them and individual groups achieve what they want to achieve. Helping the organisation achieve what it wants through communication is vital, because sometimes doing that, we need to, as communicators, adjust the course of our organisations. So when we listen to stakeholders and they say, we're really concerned about your organisation doing this and that, you go back to your leadership team and say, these stakeholders are concerned. If we don't adjust course, we're in for a world of pain. So can we change course, or can we go back and make modifications and work with these stakeholders to convince them and satisfy them that what we're doing is the appropriate way forward? So sometimes as comms people, we need to provide that strategic advice, helping our organisations change directions, but we can't forget that at the end of the day, it's our job to help an organisation achieve its goals.
So you touched on it a little bit earlier as well, and we mentioned it in the introduction about the introduction of artificial intelligence. Can't really get through a podcast these days without talking about artificial intelligence in some way, shape or form. Where it, and again, from an academic point of view, and obviously your involvement with the IABC, you're seeing a lot of it, you're reading a lot of cases, I suppose, about the implementation of artificial intelligence, how people are using it. Again, taking that wider view, what are you seeing at the moment in terms of the impacts of artificial intelligence now? And I'll ask a couple of more questions off the back of that.
Well, look, to me, it's all a matter of perspective. I mean, you can look at any issues in a positive or negative light. Is AI going to destroy the world, or is it going to make it a utopian society? Well, I don't think either of those realities are going to happen. I think for comms people, whilst there is a lot of concern out there about AI, whether it's going to take our jobs, I like to flip that around and see AI as a huge opportunity for communicators, because the very nature of our role, going out and talking with, listening to stakeholders, gives us an enormous advantage over everyone else in the organisation. It's our job to talk to stakeholders. We know what's going on. We know what they want. We know what they expect. We deal with our internal customers and our internal stakeholders. So we have an understanding of where they're using AI, how they could use it, what problems we can foresee. We can see how we can help our organisations to use AI to do what we do better. So for me, for every communicator out there, my message about being a leader is more true than ever in a world of AI. Look at AI, go and talk internally about how you're using it, identify with your stakeholders the problems and opportunities, and then come up with a way forward so those the problems are minimized and those opportunities are maximized. That's the power of comms. We can do that. We can bring our stakeholders together. We don't need to know the technical details about how a large language model works, but we know what people are concerned about. We know about risk management. We know about the importance of having policies and good communication within an organization. And look, you wouldn't let mechanics and the inventors of a car decide on the road rules. So we shouldn't be letting the tech bros and big tech decide on the rules for AI, both societally and within our organizations as well. We're in the driver's seat. We've got to look at the problems. We've got to come up with ways to minimize those, but at the same time, use the tech to do what we do better.
What would you see as the major problems or the major challenges around the implementation of the ethical use of AI in organisations, and how can they be addressed by the people who are listening to this podcast today? Yeah,
look, the number one thing is don't listen to the tech bros. When we don't have to implement AI tomorrow. If you don't implement it within the next week, you're not going to miss out. Do this in a systematic, structured and thoughtful way. Look at the services that you are going to use. Look at their governance. Look at how they're using the data. Get your lawyers involved. Get your governance people involved. Get your tech people, your IT people. What are the security issues? There is a huge push out there, understandably, by the tech industry and the AI sector to convince naive leaders that AI is going to solve all your problems. Just give us a couple of $1 million, David, and we'll solve all of your problems with AI. Well, what if those opportunities don't eventuate and there are a lot more risks and they're going to cost you money? Who's going to cop it? It's not. The AI sector will have taken the money, all care, no responsibility. I think it comes back to organizational leaders to think very carefully about the way that you are adopting this technology, because once the genie is out of the bottle within an organization, it's really hard to put it back in. There's no pressure to do this in the next 24 hours. Take a systematic, thorough approach to the implementation of AI. And getting back to comms people, we are the natural leaders in this space. We're not the tech people, but we can bring our stakeholders both internally and externally together to come up with these solutions. So again, I think, comms people, be a leader in this space and you can have a big impact in both society and organisationally as well.
So again, then in terms of the sort of the practical application, so let's say that we've gone through that, we've actually got to the point where we're now starting to use it. Where are you seeing the most use of artificial intelligence? Is it in the creation of content? Is it in the assessment and analysing of data? Is it in, just how do you see people are using the tools at the moment, and where do you think the most popular applications are going to be for AI as tools for communicators to do their job more effectively?
Yeah, look, I love that word, tools. And we need to see them as that and not a substitute for human thinking and not a substitute for human-centric communication. If comms people start using AI to write for them, to think critically for them, I am just as concerned about the future for individual communicators as I am for my students. Yeah, I'm sure my students roll their eyes and just think, oh no, here Ross goes off on a rant again about it. But if we are abdicating our thinking to AI services, which of course are all biased, These are commercial services. If we abdicate our thinking, it's not going to be too long before we lose the skill of being able to critically think. We're going to lose the skill of being able to communicate. So for students, if they don't develop those skills early on in their life, I am really concerned about the future for them and for society more broadly. So the first thing I would say is use it as a tool. Use it to critically analyze and give you some prompts to, how can I make my writing more inclusive? Yeah, and sure, you can use it for things like, make sure that the spelling and the grammar is all right. And I'm sure most of us are using it for those sort of things. But also, use it to help in idea formation. So things like brainstorming, if you don't have anyone to bounce ideas off, sit down with ChatGPT, come up with some ideas first and say, hey, look, I've got an idea for, A, B, and C. Here are my 3 suggestions. Please come up with another 10 that would work in the situation. Now, from my experience and talking with a lot of people as well, that those 10 suggestions are going to be pretty average. But it helps you. You can look at it and go, oh, yeah, okay, they're not going to work. But if I combine 4 and 12, I said 10, didn't I? So 4 and 10, that's a great idea that I hadn't thought about. So helping you come up with ideas and brainstorm is probably one of the best solutions I see at the moment. But also, there are some surprises as well in some of the tech that I'm using.
Mm. Yeah, look, it's phenomenal technology though, isn't it? When you consider that, well, when I started my career, we would type in triplicate with blotting paper.
Me too.
First started
manual typewriter
at the ABC with the typewriter. But to think that we've got these tools now that can be of such assistance to us, it's phenomenal. Just exactly how they can be used. But I take your point that you really have to work with these tools to get the best out of them, and don't just abrogate all responsibility. Because, I tend to agree with you. The first rough drafts that you might get out of ChatGPT do a reasonable sort of a job, but it often lacks the sort of punch that you're looking for to try to differentiate yourself in what is a highly competitive world for a person's time and attention. So the human touch still a key part of it. But are you optimistic ultimately that we'll be able to find our way forward through to this? Let's not call it utopia, but let's call it an ethically. An enabled ethically AI future where, things are working well, and massive net benefit to the way that we use these tools to be able to think about our audiences, to be able to, do some strategic planning, to be able to do the data analysis, to be able to do the content creation in all its different formats. They are wonderfully powerful tools.
Yeah, look, overall I'm positive, but I am alert to the potential for AI to be misused. I think if you look back at social media, and I was heavily involved in social media, chaired lots of conferences, did lots of papers and reports on it. The turning point, I think, for many people with social media was the Arab Spring uprising, where we saw the power of social media to be able to change governments around the world. And subsequently, we've seen the political power of social media. Back in the day, I remember chairing a government relations summit in Canberra, and I convinced the organizer, Glenn Fost. I said, look, social media is going to be a big thing. Let me do a breakout session on social media at the Government Communications Summit. And he said, oh, yeah, okay, all right, you can do that. And I think about 6 people turned up to the room. And one of the delegates, I mentioned this, and they looked at me, and it's probably somebody you would know, David, in the lobbying space. And he looked at me and said, oh, look, social media will never take off in politics. That'll never find a niche there. Yeah. And I just shook my head and thought, yeah. But I think with AI, that Arab Spring uprising moment hasn't come yet, but it will. I mean, I think that the opportunity for bad actors and governments to be able to use, and commercial organizations to be able to manipulate us through AI is a scary prospect. But I want to take it back. Why am I optimistic? I think comms people, if we start voicing our concerns about, inappropriate use of AI, raising them with government, raising them within our organisation, I'm hopeful that some work to ensure that the worst case scenario doesn't happen, or at least it's minimised, will happen. So we've got to get out there, and comms people are the natural leaders for this, David. We understand what stakeholders expect. We understand the importance of ethics, doing the right thing. We understand the importance of being open, honest, and transparent. We've got the ear of senior managers. We know how to communicate to policymakers. It's time for us to step up and start alerting everyone to the problems. And I think if we do that, then we can really benefit from this technology. So to wrap up, I think comms people need to understand the breadth of AI issues. We don't need to know the technical details of it, but we need to know where are the power players, what are they wanting to do, what's the difference between North America and Europe, what's happening in other areas, to think about those policies, how they're going to shape what we do within our organisations. Look at, key issues like data, security, privacy, equity, all of those issues, and put that filter on our use of AI. And whilst I don't think we've got all of the answers at the moment, I'm confident that thinking through these things systematically at an organisational and a national level, we will come up with the right solutions.
Indeed. And I think join the conversation with fellow communicators at the IABC as well around a lot of these topics that Ross is involved in, and others leaders in the IABC communications community across the globe. So that would be another great place to stay up to date. Well, Ross Monaghan from Deakin University, thank you for your message of leadership, of curiosity, of stakeholder engagement, and of the need to lead. To get out there and to make it happen, and your optimistic note, which I share, about the future of our function. It is a lot of fun. It is just so much fun doing good work and doing interesting work, and as you say, to tell great stories on behalf of your policy, your program, your service, your regulation, or if you're in the private sector, your brand, whatever it is that you're doing. It's an interesting time to stay curious and stay engaged. So Ross, a big thanks to you for joining us today, and to you, the audience, thank you once again for coming back. As ever, delighted that you have spent some time with us today to listen to a real pro, someone who's been around, someone who started as a journalist all those years ago in southern Victoria in the town of Warrnambool in search of his surfboard, and has gone through and worked across industry, academia and journalism, and has observed it from close quarters. So a big thanks again to Ross today. You can rate or review the program, or if you like or subscribe. It does help us to be found, and we certainly do appreciate that. And you can find all the latest information, updates and insights from this and all our other GovComms episodes on LinkedIn at the GovComms Institute. It was a delight to speak to Ross today, and we look forward to bringing you another great story from the world of government communications in the next fortnight. But for the moment, my name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.
You've been listening to the GovComms podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate and subscribe to stay up to date with our latest episodes.